After a traumatic birth, Mr. Smith decided to adopt a dog for his paralyzed son, hoping to make things better. What happened a few months later left everyone in shock. On a sweltering afternoon in a quiet Montana neighborhood, Terry Smith was a storm of emotions. Today was his son's first birthday, and he was on his way to get a special gift. Before little Timmy was born, Terry and his wife had spent months planning an extravagant party for their boy's first birthday. But now their reality was far from those joyful dreams. The past few months had been incredibly tough for Mr. Smith. Instead of a big party, he focused on something he believed could truly help a dog. Many had told him a pet could do wonders for his son more than any doctor could. Loving his boy more than anything, Terry embraced the advice wholeheartedly. Walking into the animal shelter, he found himself surrounded by adorable dogs, each one vying for his attention. Then an English toy terrier caught his eye with its curious gaze. Terry had researched different dog breeds and felt this little terrier could be perfect for Timmy. Small enough to be gentle but still loyal and protective, it was exactly what his son needed. He still remembered the terrifying silence in the delivery room, then Timmy's strong cries filling the air, and the immense relief that followed. The birth had been traumatic for both parents, and for a long time Terry had feared the worst. But now Timmy was here, alive and beautiful. Then the doctors had whisked Timmy away, not even allowing Terry or his wife to hold him. The nurses' solemn faces haunted him, and he felt a fear unlike any he'd known before. Waiting anxiously, he vividly recalled the moment the doctor told them Timmy was born with a damaged spine. Squeezed too hard in the birth canal, his delicate vertebrae had suffered, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. The chances of him regaining mobility were slim, but not non-existent. Terry clung to that hope with everything he had. The doctor suggested countless physical therapy sessions, and Terry immediately agreed, desperate for any chance to help his son. He wanted to stay positive, but his wife couldn't share his optimism. Devastated, she blamed herself for Timmy's condition, despite the doctor's reassurances. In the months following the birth, her sorrow mixed with postpartum depression, turning her into a shadow of her former self. She could barely bring herself to hug Timmy, let alone participate in his PT sessions. Working late to cover medical expenses, Terry knew Timmy wasn't getting enough stimulation. When he suggested getting a dog, his wife merely shrugged. Secretly, he hoped the dog would help her too. The extravagant birthday party was out of the question, so Terry decided it was the perfect time to adopt a furry friend, believing the unconditional love of a dog could bring joy to Timmy's life. When Terry locked eyes with the English toy terrier, he felt an instant connection. He had read about the breed's loyalty and affection, and knew it was the ideal fit for his son. Some experts claimed that the physical stimulation from a playful dog could strengthen a paralyzed person's muscles and resolve. Terry didn't expect the dog to help Timmy walk, but he knew it would turn his mundane days into wonderful adventures. With a mix of excitement and hope, Terry began the adoption process for the English terrier. Paperwork, signatures, and a fee later, he committed to providing a loving home for the dog, eager to see the joy it would bring to his son's life. Taking the newly adopted terrier home felt like the start of a new chapter. As Terry drove, his mind buzzed with a mix of excitement and apprehension. How would Timmy react to this surprise? Would he be scared of the dog? Would the dog be scared of him? They'd find out soon enough. Before heading home, Terry stopped by a local bakery to pick up a cake. It was his son's birthday, and he knew his wife hadn't baked anything. Along with the cake, he chose a cute bow for the dog, a small touch to make the moment even more special. Returning home with a cake and the adorable dog, Terry felt nervous but hopeful. He knew these next steps were crucial for improving life at home. When he opened the front door and let the terrier in, his wife stared at him with a frown. Seriously, she asked, "Now I have to take care of a child and a dog while you spend all your days in your office." Terry felt hurt but kept his smile. He knew his wife was suffering as much as he was, and she had a long road of therapy ahead. He calmly explained that he had already arranged for their housekeeper to take care of the dog's needs in the morning, and he would handle the evening walks. The terrier would be a delightful distraction for Timmy, giving her some much-needed time for herself. She let out a bitter chuckle. "Do you want me to leave our son alone with a dog he doesn't know?" she asked. "Of course not," Terry replied, feeling his anger simmer but staying calm. "I just want you to watch over them when they play." "He can't play. He can't even crawl," she barked at him. "He will," he said firmly, ending the discussion. She shrugged and took the cake from him while he went to Timmy's room. As usual, the baby was in his crib, clutching a plush toy to his chest, babbling to himself. Terry's heart broke for his child. He rarely left his room and had never met another kid. But little Timmy was about to make a lifelong friend. Terry picked up his son, made a fuss of him, and walked towards the sitting room. The dog, still wearing its cute bow, gave a little bark when they entered. Timmy's eyes lit up with joy at the sight of the furry friend, his tiny hands reaching out for the terrier. Terry put him down and sat behind him, whistling to catch the pup's attention. The dog approached cautiously, its tail wagging with excitement. Timmy reached out and touched its head, squealing in delight. For a moment, the room felt lighter, and even Terry's wife smiled. Days passed, and the dog became a cherished part of their home. Terry fed the dog every morning before work, and the housekeeper made sure it had everything it needed. Terry's wife mostly ignored it, but Terry noticed a huge change in his son. The once quiet boy was now laughing all the time, begging to be on the floor next to his furry friend. He was always smiling when Terry came back from work, and his babbling was improving. A few weeks later, even Terry's wife admitted that adopting the dog had been a great idea. Timmy only wanted to play with it, and since the dog never shied away, she had more time to relax and take care of herself. She started attending therapy 3 times a week, and her mood was improving daily. She became more affectionate towards her son, and after 2 months she even offered to take both Timmy and the dog for walks around the block. She was the one to suggest Duke as the pup's name. Things were looking up in the Smith household, all thanks to the tiny terrier. In the following months, Terry noticed a positive transformation in his son. The baby who could barely lift his arms could now sit on his own and had learned to bounce on his bum to move after the dog. Duke seemed to understand that his tiny friend couldn't run with him, and patiently waited for him to slide across the floor in pursuit of toys and balls. Timmy's physical therapy sessions were finally showing the results Terry had hoped for. According to the doctor, his core muscles were almost as strong as other children his age, and his legs were strengthening as well. He couldn't crawl yet, but Terry was hopeful. The transformation extended to his wife as well. She finally emerged from her shell and started playing more with both their son and the dog. Terry often found her on the floor with them when he came back from work, and her happy smile made his heart melt. Duke, with his wagging tail and loyal eyes, had become more than a pet. He was his family's second chance at happiness. Seeing the positive impact the tiny dog had on both his son and his wife, Terry felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for their furry friend, who had become an unexpected source of healing. As the days turned into months, Timmy kept progressing. His doctor was overjoyed to share with the family that he was starting to flex his knees when they left the hospital. Both Terry and his wife cried tears of happiness. Their boy had been born with little hope, But since Duke had entered his life, he had started defying all the odds. According to the doctor, his desire to play with the dog and chase after him was pushing him to move his muscles, strengthening his spine in turn. While the doctor didn't believe Timmy would walk, he told the family that perhaps one day he could learn to crawl. That day came sooner than expected. Timmy was 18 months old when Terry received a video call that made his heart somersault in his chest. His wife never called him when he was at work, so he picked up the phone with trembling hands, fearing the worst. He only heard her scream intelligible words, but thankfully the scene she was recording spoke for itself. Little Timmy was crawling after Duke. The dog held a ball in his mouth and was jumping off the floor, as if challenging his tiny human to steal it from him. Timmy's legs were still bent at an awkward angle, but he was crawling nonetheless, and most importantly, he was laughing his little heart out. That evening, Terry bought another cake, and the family had another party. This time the atmosphere was very different from the day he had come home with Duke in tow. Timmy was rolling on the floor after the dog, his wife was smiling, and he thought life couldn't be better. But he was wrong. One calm Saturday morning, Timmy and Duke were playing in the living room while Terry enjoyed the quiet on the porch with a good book. Timmy's range of movements had improved further, bringing relief to everyone. He could now crawl with ease, and once Terry's wife had even seen him throw a little kick at a ball. Terry still found himself smiling when he thought back to the birthday party they had thrown for Timmy's second trip around the sun. They had dressed little Timmy as a dog, and he and Duke had twinned all day long. By this time, both he and his wife felt confident leaving their son alone in a room with the dog. Timmy was still a pretty slow crawler, and Duke's protective instincts were always on high alert. However, Terry was about to find out that his dog had developed a whole new set of instincts. In the peaceful quiet, where the only sounds were the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional chirping of birds, Duke suddenly started barking relentlessly from the living room. Curious about the dog's sudden change in behavior, Terry looked up from his book and called for him. Duke couldn't contain his barking. Something was off, but Terry couldn't quite figure out what had triggered Duke's unusual behavior. His wife was taking a quick shower, and he could hear little Timmy babbling to himself in the living room. Everything seemed normal. Thinking that perhaps Duke wanted to play, Terry decided to engage the energetic dog. He fetched a ball and tossed it toward the living room for Duke to chase. However, much to his surprise, Duke paid no attention to the ball. Instead, he continued to bark uncontrollably. Initially amused by Duke's antics, Terry began to sense that there might be more to the situation than a playful mood. The persistent barking indicated a heightened level of alertness, as if Duke were trying to communicate something important. Now intrigued and a bit concerned, Terry decided to follow Duke to see what had captured his attention. The dog led him to the living room, where Timmy was playing with some toy soldiers standing on his own 2 feet. Terry felt his knees wobble and had to steady himself against the wall to avoid fainting. It should have been impossible, but his eyes were not deceiving him. His paralyzed son, the child all the doctors believed incapable of ever walking, was standing straight on his legs. Tears started streaming down Terry's cheeks, and he couldn't contain the loud sob that escaped his mouth. Little Timmy noticed his father standing in the doorway and frowned at the sight of his tears. "Are you sad, Daddy?" he asked, putting his toys down to face him. "No, Timmy," Terry replied, trying and failing to dry his eyes. "Daddy has never been happier." The child chuckled and went back to his game. Terry willed his legs to work again and sprinted towards the bathroom, where he almost kicked the door down knocking. His wife emerged in her bathrobe, and he didn't even give her time to put on some clothes as he dragged her to the living room, where Timmy was still standing and playing. Unlike Terry, his wife couldn't keep her legs from giving out. She slid to the floor, bursting into tears, and Timmy found himself facing another crying parent in the span of a few minutes. "Mama, you too," he squealed. He turned to face her, his tiny feet shuffling on the floor without losing strength or balance. Terry's wife gave another sob. "Can you come to me, baby?" she managed to say through the tears. Timmy looked down at his wobbly legs and frowned. He didn't know if he could cover the small distance that separated him from his mom. But that's when his best friend came to his aid. Duke ran towards him and settled next to him, letting Timmy put a hand on his back, steadying himself on the dog. The 2-year-old child wobbled towards his mother. Terry cheered for him, encouraging him to find his balance. Timmy almost fell twice, but Duke was with him every step of the way, walking slowly to match his unsure pace. When Timmy lunged towards his mother's open arms, even Duke let out a victorious yelp. The tiny terrier Terry had adopted a year ago had just taught his son how to walk. Moved by the realization, Terry picked up the dog and hugged the furry hero. The incident forged a newfound appreciation for Duke within the family. Terry couldn't shake off the shock of what Duke had done for all of them. In a surprising twist of events, the little dog had helped Timmy defy the odds, brought a smile back to his wife's face, and helped him get his family back. Duke might be just a small dog, but he had performed an enormous feat, and Terry would always be grateful for him. And that's our story for today. Have you ever heard about a pet who helped its owners face some health challenges? Would you have trusted the process like Terry did? Share your thoughts and comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next incredible